Good morning. This is Ken Barron, and I'm here with a very special guest today. And I'm going to learn about poetry, and he's going to, in fact, teach us, me, on his latest accomplishments. He's a very prolific author and a great poet. I want you to welcome Daniel Romo. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Daniel is, as I said, an author, and he's here to discuss his latest books. Let me do a plug here and show it and get it in focus for you. This is Moonlighting as an Avalanche. Take my finger off here and you'll see something down in the bottom left, I think yours would be. And that's a hand coming out of the snow there as the Moonlighting comes in. Well, he's also asking us, anyone that's interested in this and wants to learn about it, you can get this at tbotbach.com. I think I got that right, Daniel?
Yeah, by the time people see this, it should be, you actually have an exclusive copy. So I got my author copy. So in the next few weeks,
it's signed as well, guys.
Yeah,
so
you can go to
stuff that one.
From there, you can go to a small press distribution and order.
Okay.
It should be up this week.
Very good. His writing and poetry has all been featured in Los Angeles Review, Pank, the Good Men Project, Yamase, and elsewhere. And in previous conversation, he wants to start his own book outlet, which will be wonderful in this world of Amazon, when young, prolific writers with lots of talent hopefully can go to different sites and get away from the big book online stores. He's got a Master's of Fine Arts from Queen's University of Charlotte. And like me, he lives in Long Beach, California. And you can email in, and we'll remind you at the end of the talk here to visit him at danielromo.wordpress.com. Thank you, Daniel. First question. I think you're an English teacher.
I am an English teacher, yeah.
And indeed, I'm guessing a lot of English teachers write and do poetry. Is that kind of your drift? You've always been interested in writing?
I've somewhat. I really didn't start picking up writing poetry seriously until about 12 years ago. I read at local open mics on 4th Street. So 3 times a week, I would read my poems at open mics. I would go to spoken word place called Shades of Africa on Saturday nights. Wednesday nights was Portfolio. Tuesday nights was Viento de Agua. So I kind of took that route first before I started realizing that you can go to graduate school for poetry. So it kind of became a progression, spoken word-ish poems to the more poems suited for the page, if you will.
Okay. So when I looked at your publication here, and again, I'm a neophyte on this, I was looking for the A, B, C, D rhyming lines. And I initially was disappointed, I might say, my friend. But then when I started to read it as a story and a thinking item, and in fact, prose, as they call it, enlighten me. What is the style of writing in this book, if there's a name that goes with it? I'm sure it's unique.
Yeah, generally, it seems we're all brought up with AA, BB, or AB rhyme scheme.
Right.
And yeah, that's how I used to write as well. And then I started getting into spoken word poetry, and I wasn't really performing as much. I was more writing in that vein, but it's freer. There's not a lot of constraints, and you can just, do whatever you want, go any direction that you'd like. And then I learned about prose poems. So these are called prose poems, as the name implies. They look like prose, but they're actually poems. So the prose poems for me, and there's so many different ways you can define them, but for me, a prose poem isn't necessarily a narrative in the traditional sense. And prose poems, I don't think, are traditional. They have a little bundle of fire in there that non-prose poems don't possess for me. There can be an instant, they can be a moment fleshed out. And so that's what I think these poems are. These poems are emotions fleshed out not necessarily from here to here, but like this.
So these are kind of like almost dreams in my mind, almost utterances and almost developments around a few words, an instant, and they grab your attention in such a short amount of time. That's what really impressed me, that you can get across that information, and then the reader bubbles it across his mind and percolates it. Wonderful stuff. So let's hear about it. Are you willing and able to read some for us? We're shooting for, if possible, 8 to 10 readings. Our viewers will know it's relatively short, so you'll enjoy his style. My husband's tell me all about it. So where do you want to kick off, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm just going to start with the beginning, with the first couple poems. The book, if you read it from cover to cover, it kind of tells a story of an avalanche. So if you look at the cover, here's the avalanche, and an avalanche will bury you. It will destroy you. However, the hand in the corner signifies the avalanche won't always destroy you. You know, you still have life. You still have hope. So initially, the book is written in a season of my life where I felt like an avalanche was coming down upon me. But if you read throughout the progression of the book, I kind of show that despite everything, I still had hope. And so that's what the hand signifies. So I'm going
Super.
to start with the first couple poems that kind of set the tone of the book.
Okay.
This is the first poem in the book. It's called Molecules. Towing the line between stillness and seeking allows for too many clouds to be pondered. Each trace of vapor is a repressed inhalation, suspended between sky and supposition. The fog is most dense at the expense of denying the existence of the sun. Telling one to hang in there is neither practical nor poetic, unless there is an equally unforgiving common ground. What's good for the goose is good for the demander. Living vicariously through any film can result in regression of steps, even for the most empathetic of revisitors. Traveling light doesn't account for lugging around heavy hearts and history. Memorizing the most painful dates doesn't require the use of flashcards. No shortcuts can be taken to reach the point of forging on and forgiving yourself.
Yeah, I'm particularly enjoying that bit about what's good for the goose is good for the demander, and that really is a nice lyrical composition on that. What brought you to Molecules on this one? Was that like your start of the whole book, or was it just, are these weaved together?
You know, what I do is when I'm in seasons of my life, I tend to write poems that are thematic. So
Yeah.
when I had enough that I felt would compile a book, I spread them all across the floor, and I decide, okay, how do I want to introduce my reader to what I'm writing about, and how do I want to end it? What impression do I want them to be left with? So it's kind of strategic the way all these poems are placed, and I just felt that this one was a good leadoff hitter. I like baseball a lot, so your leadoff hitter is
Yeah.
supposed to get on. It's supposed to grab the reader's attention. So the first few poems in the book, I'd like to think that they grab the reader's attention and they kind of set the tone.
They do. Okay. What's next?
This is the second poem in the book. This is called Revelation. A lot of times in these prose poems, I'll think of a line. I'll just be walking down the street and I'll be thinking of a line and I'll think, that's pretty poetic. I think that would be a good first sentence of a prose poem. And then from there, I'll just run with it. So I think I was just thinking of this line and sat down at Starbucks probably and wrote this poem. This is Revelation. The improper way to drop a bombshell is to consider the debris. One can't be concerned with casualties when delivering an earth-shattering announcement. Every plot of land is in cahoots with one another to withstand the weight of its own world. Each stray blade of grass is a reminder that a denser forest exists. Showing sympathy acknowledges the presence of guilt, but giving breath to smothered sentiments doesn't require an apology. Merely existing is sufficient grounds for divorcing the man from the damage. Going through the motions requires perfecting the most barren routine. So much to ponder in between inception and finality. So much to mourn in between every and thing.
That's pretty deep, isn't it? I mean, it really makes you think on that one.
I try, yeah, yeah. I don't want to pound my reader over the head with any message, and I don't think poetry should do that, nor any writing if it's crafted well enough. I want the reader to grasp what they can from it. So
Yeah.
that's, I write in my style, and however a reader wants to take it, I just want to elicit something within them, ideally.
Yeah, and I have to say, I go to museums and look at pictures, and when I do poetry, I usually don't really picturize the scene if that's the scene they're producing. But in some of these poems, I can just feel like I'm empathizing or sympathizing or actually just seeing what's happening. And that's great. That's great. Okay, number 3.
This is called The Broken Places. Visiting familiar terrain can be both a painful reminder and remainder, but what's left and what's next are neither synonymous nor negotiable. Although not the choicest of destinations, returning to where it all began delivers a vital stamp to any passport intent on producing personal growth and beloved public Instagram photos. Labeling any parcel of land gives the distinct feeling of overcoming or overcompensating, but memory can't ever escape an umbrella term denoting rubble and hurt. Gathering the fractured pieces is the most popular activity at any pity party, while moving on comes in at a close second. Filling in the cracks with small talk is as fitting a song title as Tiptoeing Through a Tornado. Painful locations are never initial topics of conversation, never a nice to meet you. Want to hear all about my childhood trauma before shaking a new hand. Facing your biggest fears often means retracing many small steps and deaths. Putting yourself back together again is a chance to plant snapdragons in the chasms you thought too deep to ever reach.
Interesting. Your reference to the Instagram generation there. Is this kind of how we would normally view your poems, as being anti-social? Not
Well, there is a
anti-social, but
poem
anti.
here. I wasn't going to read it, but now I think I am. There is a poem in here. I was imagining, what if, we showcase all these great things in our lives, but we hurt, as the
Yeah,
book
yeah.
demonstrates. What if we had a social media in which we only showcased the times in our lives that hurt the most? So it's funny you should mention that. So I think that's a nice segue to the poem later on.
Okay.
So I'll read that one later.
All right. Too cool. Number 4. I'm counting, but I'm not limiting.
Sure,
It's your choices.
sure. This is called UFOs. Juggling lovers is most effective underneath an overcast sky. Clouds are neither enemy nor ally. But gravity doesn't change just because sunlight chooses to be discreet. And women come crashing back down to earth harder than bowling pins. The blonde redhead split being the most difficult shot in existence. Rotating such company requires the most precise of conditions, chiefly remembering the correct name of each female when on dates. The difficulty in keeping bodies balanced in the atmosphere is adjusting for the wind and maintaining the conscience in constant motion. The best jugglers transition into gigolos, but the best gigolos become jaded and fade off into fog. If you ever see a woman who appears to be flying or flailing, bow your head and pray for a soft landing.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the two buzzwords on that: jugglers and gigolos. That's kind of a nice combination of extremes, I suppose.
Yeah, I try to pair words together that
Yep.
have similar sounds but are extremes. So
Okay,
I
cool.
find that I do that a lot in here.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. It's challenging to find the opposites while maintaining the rhythm.
There's work in this in poems that people don't appreciate. They like the rhythm, they like the story, they like the pictures, but they forget. Even a paragraph takes so much work and refining. So do you like go back on your poems and redo them, or just completely forget about them and bundle them together in some sort of order? How does that work?
I write so much, and poetry was a hobby. Now it's a lifestyle. I write so much that when I think a poem is done, and there's debates whether a poem is actually ever done, but when I feel I'm able to leave this poem, I'll leave it and work on something else. These poems were written, in fact, 5, 6 years ago,
Wow.
as recently as 3. So just reading these, I had to practice because I've written so much, and I think my style has changed a bit because of the season of my life that I'm now in versus the season of my life that I was in when I wrote these poems.
They're transcendental, though. We all have gigolos in our life. Well, I'm sure I did. And we all have jugglers, and we're all juggling. So, you can go back and look at it as a perfectionist like yourself. But for someone like myself, I just think it's a joy to read. I can imagine me reading this years from now and thinking, wow, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely brings back some memories of where I was, and thankfully where I am now.
Okay. And let's go on to the next one, if you would.
So this is a poem I was talking about social media, imagining what if, we had social media that only showcased the hard moments. So this is called Photogenic. The newest form of social media displays the worst times of users' lives. Snapshots like broken windows, glimpses of hardships at the swipe of your fingertips. Users can share friends' photos because there's unity in misery. 1,000 trillion tons of the earth perched upon your shoulder is equivalent to a flood of memories rooted in rot. Comments range from cheerleading the arrival of brighter days to spearheading the descent into an even darker hole. Behind every successful fan club is a devotion that could only be measured in total amount of manic episodes. The same boat produces less sickness when everyone in it is sinking. There's nothing like starting the day with a double tap for loving an image so forlorn it gives your grief hope.
Yeah, when I went through the book, I just thought, here's some bailiwick of mine, social media, which, I'm part of that, and I produce on that. I produce content, and I produce interviews like this on there. And then it gets drowned out in content that people want a snapshot of something. They want to tell people they're feeling good and they've gone here and gone there. But basically, when you talk about your mother passing away or something like that, it's non-evident, except just the sheer recording of a fact rather than, moving on. Is that the way you empathize with what I'm feeling here, or is it completely different? Am I wrong on this?
So I think, even sometimes, I don't post a whole lot. Initially, I got social media to promote myself when I first started
Right.
writing. But then, I started posting stuff that everyone does. And then sometimes I'm thinking, do I really need to post this? So there's a balance that I don't know that I've learned to navigate yet. But I do find that when I am not connected to social media, when I'm reading more, when I'm writing more, that I think I'm better for it in the long run. So
Yeah, I think we're all benefiting if we meet people face to face, which is very difficult in the last 19 months. We're learning, at least some of us, maybe younger people amongst us are learning that they don't need to really listen. They don't need to communicate. They only need to be able to use 2 thumbs as rapidly as possible on a keyboard. That's not really a keyboard. It's really just a piece of glass. And then I know I'm talking beyond what our subject is, but I feel deeply that anyone with the ability to balance that, to record it and ask alternative ways of using social media should be commended.
yes.
Thank you. Let's have a couple more.
Okay. This poem is called Knockout. Throwing a haymaker most often results in grazing the wind. A last-ditch effort to connect fist with face. The puniest opposition can land a lucky punch, but being able to take one without falling defies familiarity with the ground. Roses are red, violets are black and blue. Certain makeovers begin with internalizing the bruising, but the best foundations can hide even the slightest traces of pain. Most selfies are taken in the bathroom because it provides the best lighting, yet back against the wall showcases a tacky home decor. The darkest corners birth the most desperate men. Mothers lose their sons in the shadows and raise a generation of ghosts. Sack lunches remain untouched on the kitchen table. The odds of surviving any fight depend on the ratio of belief to breath.
That's spectacular. Now that one I can look at and empathize and really enjoy visually on that. And again, you have very good style of bringing it out fast and rapid. The more I think about this and listen to the way you present this and discuss it, the more I think is to be able to use a compact method of putting together a paragraph, basically a long paragraph, to me is really a good skill. And, I do technical writing sometimes, and even with the jargon that you have to compress in there and it's necessary, I find it very difficult to be able to get that composed in a single paragraph or two. And you seem to do that remarkably. I'm pretty impressed with roses are red, violets are black and blue. And then that, using that expression to move into the rest of the analogy here. Remarkable. Let's go to the final one here, and then hopefully we got the flavor of how you work.
Okay, this poem is the last poem in the book.
Okay.
What I want my reader to be left with upon reading the book from cover to cover. This is Morning, M-O-U-R, Morning. The new horizon ascends with lack of lament and cleansing. Washing away the hurt signifies burial or baptism. The ultimate in resuscitation and redundancy can be found in being born again. And each new breath is a testament to believing in what you can't see. Blowing on your hands during the coldest morning provides the damnedest evidence. Basic mathematics can be reduced to counting the steps towards regaining your footing in faith. Slipping is only traumatic if one decides not to recover. Only time will tell on you. Putting yourself back together begins with identifying and reassembling the various fragments of grace. Choosing which child to save during a flood is any parent's worst nightmare. God loves broken men and thunderstorms.
That's great. Daniel, I think we got a really good flavor. Where do you go from here? You're a school teacher, of course, and we thank you for that. And that'll take your time. Max said to me, my husband said, wow, he won't want to really do this because he has to respond to parents, to respond to kids, read essays. So he knows what it's like, and I didn't. And again, I appreciate that. But what's the next step in developing this wonderful art?
Well, I taught college for a while, and I really liked that. I taught high school during the day and college at night, but it was interfering with my writing actually. And so I gave that up. So something I would like to teach at the college level, ideally creative writing, just because I feel that I've done a lot for my high school students. I feel that someday I'm meant to segue into the college arena and share on a deeper level the words that I've learned myself and enable them to teach to other adults who share an interest in the arts. That's
wonderful, Daniel. I've been the proud graphic designer. I mean, I don't produce content that's any remarkable sense, but I'm a graphic designer, a website and the like. And it's always my joy to be able to put into place, however that is, what medium the print is, or maybe it's website, or maybe it's Facebook or whatever. But to be able to be side by side with a content creator like yourself is always a privilege for me. We definitely look forward to your work becoming in your own book outlet. Is that right? Tell us about that. You say you want to, if possible, do that. I think I overheard that once.
I would love to. I would love to have my own press that would publish poetry, fiction, photography. There's a lot of presses, but some of them are more focused, and I would love to someday start that up. We'll see.
Well, we wish you luck in that. We wish you luck in your teaching career, and certainly Tell us again how we can get this, how and when, I suppose to say. I'm a lucky guy, I have this. How do we do that?
Yeah. So my publisher and I are working on getting it to small press distribution. So small press distribution is going to be the way to go.
Okay.
Also, you can go to danieljromo.com. That's my official website. And when the book is ready for sale, I can make sure that the link is there and you can buy one. Okay,
well, we'll put that in our show notes. And I will set that up for when you think your target is. No, I shouldn't be doing this, but is this year, you think?
Oh, yeah.
Next year. Okay. Yeah. Well, we will put your links in there. We'll put your reference in there, put a picture of your book. And once again, Daniel, it is real honor and private pleasure for you to appear on our program here. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was fun.